Here's the thing. Sometimes the greatest fears that we have about the unknown ahead of us will come true. And sometimes they won't. And whether they do or they don't, no amount of preemptive angst over them is going to change the outcome. We can't worry something out of happening. Hey there, my name is Vanessa Kaiser. I'm a ranch girl turned social worker turned business leader turned entrepreneur. I love to explore all things organization, leadership, growth, inspiration, and efficiency. There's a phrase we use a lot around here called rhythmic living, which I define as the continuous cycle of assessing what season of life we're in and how we create habits, routines, and processes that support our current season. This show is for business owners, leaders, mamas, aunties, sisters, and friends who want to grow and live inspired. Welcome to the Inspiring Heights podcast. I have a cousin who told me once, the only sure thing in this world is change. I've gotten to an age where I see the truth behind that saying quite a bit. When I was young, I used to think what was would always be. I remember a close group of friends I had in my 20s. We would hang out multiple times a week, always only a text or phone call away from ending up all together in my living room or eating a late night snack of roasted garlic wings at our favorite restaurant. In those days or years of friendship, I never for a moment considered that they would change. I never really thought about what would happen if the two of us who weren't married got married, or if we were called to different parts of the country. I thought this was for life. These are rhythms, these sweet moments, this time, it'll last forever. But 2 of us got married and 3 of us moved away. Life changed us, changed our group friendship. And change is hard. But it is, like my cousin said, something we can really count on happening. What's interesting to me is that though change is so inevitable, and it's really felt by anyone who has entered into the real world, gone to college, gotten married, had kids, moved, left a job, started a new one, literally anyone who's done any living at all, and yet change seems to catch us off guard. It throws our world into a tailspin. For something so consistent, one would think that the human race would have mastered it by now. But we haven't. The truth is, no matter how flexible, easygoing, or relaxed we are, we will inevitably experience change at some point that'll kick us right in the teeth. So here's what I've come to conclude. I haven't seen anyone in my entire life be a master of change. But I have seen a lot of people do moments of change incredibly well. So since the human race has been around a good long while and hasn't seemed to crack the change code, I don't have 7 hacks for becoming a change master. What I do have is 7 hacks for leaning into change. You ready? Let's go. Hack number 1. Stop letting fear of the unknown of tomorrow steal your joy of today. When we started remodeling our house here on the homestead, the moments were so exciting. I remember our first large purchase from the hardware store and that sense of like, wow, this is really happening. This dream we've dreamed for so long, it's about to come true. But then in the back of my mind, I was also thinking about what it was going to be like to tell my boss and my team that I was leaving. And the dread hit me like a ton of bricks. That conversation wasn't scheduled to happen for months, and yet the weight of it hung so heavy on me. I was fearing an unknown reaction, and it was sucking the joy out of some of the most precious moments. And on the other side of it now, here's what I've learned. No amount of worry or angst over their reaction changed the way that they reacted. All it did was rob me of enjoying the moments that we had worked so hard for. And my boss, the one I was the most scared to tell, He was so very gracious. He wasn't angry. He didn't chastise me for the amount of work that he had put in to help me stand up in this role. Instead, he was emotional, sincerely sad to see me go, but he was also supportive and understanding. So as the old saying goes, I was worried for nothing. To be sure, those conversations were hard and full of emotion, but the wrath I was so afraid of experiencing, it never happened. Here's the thing. Sometimes the greatest fears that we have about the unknown ahead of us will come true, and sometimes they won't. And whether they do or they don't, no amount of preemptive angst over them is going to change the outcome. We can't worry something out of happening. If we can remember that truth in moments of uncertainty about tomorrow and lay down our worry, we can live in the moment that we're in, more fully present and full of joy and excitement instead of anxiety and fear. Hack number 2, get organized. Depending upon the change at hand, there is a large probability that we are working to juggle a lot of balls. I was at a conference once where one of the speakers was a juggle master. And as he threw these super breakable balls in the air while he was talking to us, he spoke about how when you're juggling, you don't pay attention to every ball or sword or apple, insert whatever you juggle here. But rather, you are only paying attention to the one you're trying to catch. If you are juggling 3 balls, they will never all be in your hand at the same time. Trying to focus on all of them will inevitably lead to dropping them. The very same sentiment is true for us. We can't hold everything at once, and it can't all have our equal attention, equal brain space, or equal time. That said, just like a juggler can't randomly decide what ball he's going to pay attention to next, to stay on track, neither can we. This is where getting organized comes into play. In large shifts, there's lots of steps, and one will come before another. Charting a course to understand a complete task list, like a brain dump if you will, is a great starting point for getting organized. From there, we can sort through the list and identify the order of tasks, like what's dependent on another task to occur first, then delegating what needs to be delegated, and setting timelines for completion. This simple method works across the spectrum, whether you're implementing a new software at work or you're gearing up to get married or move across town. About 6 months into my time as firm administrator, the firm went through a merger. Though the merger had been in the background getting discussed for a substantial amount of time, from the time we hit the go button with the team until the deadline, the clock had just over 30 days. We didn't have time for dropping balls, so deep, quick organization was required. I ran those meetings like a drill sergeant. Everyone had their task list from the meeting before. They reported on their to-dos and verbally accepted their next checklist. The meetings were promptly followed by an email to the group with everyone's name, task, and due date. This happened every week, or sometimes multiple times a week, for the next 30 days. It was exhausting and stressful, but the merger happened in the timeframe set before us, and organization of the team was a critical component of the success. Hack number 3. Pay attention to your emotions and remember that you are in control of them. Stress doesn't tend to bring out the best in very many of us. We can get short and snappy, emotional, teary, moody, and so goes the list. Change so oftentimes is stressful. There are unknowns, things that are out of the ordinary. We don't really know what to expect totally, and ultimately we feel out of control. When we let our emotions rule over us, we allow them the opportunity to totally derail what's in front of us. I'm not proposing that we stuff emotions down and pretend they don't exist. Sis, I'm a social worker. Come on now. Rather, I am suggesting when we are experiencing big emotions during a stressful season of change, we pause to consider where they're coming from and why we're feeling them. I heard Annie F. Downs talk once about a little assessment she does when she's feeling funky. She considers a few questions like, am I hungry? Am I tired? Am I sad? Am I lonely? Sometimes our emotions are coming out of a place of physical need more than they're coming out of a place of emotional angst. Identifying the root cause of the emotion can help us to chart a path for moving forward. I remember one weekend this past summer, we had come to the house for a second weekend in a row after a really long work week. On the way here, we were gearing up with excitement for the work ahead, hoping that at the end of the weekend, all the kitchen cabinets would be put together and then painting would be done and the contractor could keep moving forward with next steps. But everything took longer than we imagined. The kitchen cabinets took longer to put together than we thought they would, and then the painting took longer than I planned. And by the time we got to Sunday, I was a mess. Everything Ben said received a snappy response from me, until my sappiness turned into a tearful breakdown. Upon assessment of these big emotions, you guessed it, I was tired. So we charted a new plan. We left sooner than we thought we would that day. Ben drove home. We went to bed early, and Monday was a whole new day. Don't let your big emotions take over and make big decisions for you. You are in control of your emotions. Assess them, get your needs met, and move forward. Hack number 4, increase communication. Is there ever even a time where increased communication isn't a key component? In all seriousness, we talk a lot about communication around here. And in the process of leaning into change, communication rises into the top 7 hacks. When we are walking through change, be it at home or at work, there's a lot of room for questions, decisions, change in process and plans. When we are not the sole person being impacted by the change, communicating with our teams, our spouses, our kids, can mean the difference between winning and losing a battle within the change. If you've ever been through a move, you understand the amount of stress it can put on your household. Consider this scenario. You're packing up the kitchen a few days before the move. You get to the pantry and you decide instead of leaving some food out for the next couple of days, you're going to order takeout until the move is complete. This way, you're able to fully pack the kitchen. This seems reasonable and even like a brilliant plan, if you're being honest. That same evening, you run out to do some errands, and your spouse, hungry and hoping to serve you, opened the pantry to whip up a quick dinner, only to find it empty. Annoyed, because hangry is a real thing, he assumes you forgot that you aren't moving for the next 48 hours, opens the pantry, pots and pans, and disposable dish boxes you just packed and made dinner. You get home an hour later to a nice meal and a kitchen that is no longer completely packed. You too are annoyed because the work you just did seems to be undone. In this scenario, and so many that we have all experienced, a little extra communication can save a lot of frustration and time. One of the things that happens when we're in the middle of change is that we have a tendency to put our head down and work. We work harder and more focused and sometimes even faster in order to accomplish the tasks set before us for this change to be successful. In those moments of super focused work, we can forget to pull our head up and communicate basic things with those that we're working with. In order to aid us in increasing our communication, having some stopgaps built into our days where we are sharing information, ideas, questions, and concerns with others that we're working with at specific times can be incredibly helpful. For example, when we were going through a software change at the firm, we would try to send out an email update once a week for the entire team to keep them informed, answer questions that had come up throughout the week, and seek feedback as they were using the new software. This stopgap, weekly emails, helped to foster open communication and draw out any issues that we were having with the software before they became a significant problem. Next time you are in a season of change, consider how and when can you naturally build in some stopgaps for communicating with those involved. Hack number 5, don't sweat the small stuff. Have you ever noticed, even if you tend to be a fairly laid-back person, stress can bring out the particular in you? I think sometimes we just want it to go so well, and in our honest and pure desire for that, we get hyper fixated on details that simply don't matter in the long run. Have you ever been around a bride-to-be? Sure, she's planning a wedding, and we claim that that's where Bridezilla comes into play. But you know what else she's planning? Her marriage and her life with her future spouse. This huge life change butts right up against this big party that she's planning. And sometimes we see her particulars come out. No, the napkins can't be folded like that. I ordered cube steak, not round steak. And my eyeshadow was supposed to be cream, not ivory. Are you serious right now? If you've ever been a part of a bridal party with a bride like that, you get me. If you haven't, just wait. Your turn is coming. I have been a part of a few bridal parties like this. Some, in fact, where the bride in real life, outside of this monumental life change, is super chill. But in the middle of the biggest change of her life, those napkin folds seem to be life or death. It's hard when we're in it to step back and see the forest through the trees. Having an accountability partner can come in handy here. Inviting someone who you can trust to gently call you out when you're obsessing over the napkin folds can help you stay on track and focused on what really matters. When we hyper-focus on the small stuff, a few things tend to happen. One, we can miss the bigger picture, which can lead to making mistakes on matters of actual high importance. Secondly, we have a tendency to alienate the people that we're working alongside. It's of high significance that we figure out how to look up and see the trees. Hack number 6, pause long enough to assess a plan for pivoting. Change can bring a lot of in-betweens. For example, when you're changing software, there's this time when you're still using the old software, but you're learning the new. A time when you can't use the old software anymore because all the data has been converted, but the new software still has a lot of unknowns to the end user. In order for the change to work, for people to buy in, and the process to have some level of efficiency, we have to be willing to pause strategically as we move through the change to assess how we need to pivot for the upcoming step. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes in seasons of big change, we are working so hard that we forget to look up. We neglect to consider things like how what we're doing is impacting the day-to-day of the people around us, or what will need to happen in the next step or phase in order to keep everything running smoothly. We sometimes even forget about what our own needs are to stay strong and focused and present. And much like setting a stopgap for communicating, we need to install natural pivot breaks for ourselves as we move through change. Sometimes it's a set amount of time, like weekly pivot assessments with the team or our spouse. Other times, it may be when we're feeling overwhelmed or sensing tension in those that we're working through the change with. Whatever your rhythm or your prompt for the pivot assessment is, be sure to communicate that with those that you're working through the change with. Hack number 7. Work to understand the cycle of change and identify where you are in it throughout the process. At the end of 2022, I had a year-end evaluation with my boss. As we talked about the implementation of the new team that happened through the merger, along with the integration and alignment of software and processes that would need to happen in the year ahead, we decided one of my main focuses needed to be on change management. Shortly thereafter, I attended a training on change, where I was formally introduced to the change cycle. I had heard and even expressed this in bits and pieces before, but having it in front of me in words was incredibly impactful. It goes like this. There are 6 stages of change. Loss, followed by doubt, followed by discomfort, followed by discovery, followed by understanding, followed by integration. See, we have this tendency to get frustrated with people who appear to be fighting change. Sometimes those people are even ourselves. To be sure, everyone handles change differently, and some people are quicker to move out of loss and doubt and discomfort into discovery mode and on up the cycle. But if we can recognize that when someone, ourselves included, are expressing resistance or cautiousness related to change, it isn't necessarily because they are, quote, change resistant, but rather that they are just in the beginning stages of the change cycle. Here's how this helps. It normalizes the fear and trepidation around change that most of us are going to experience at some point. Instead of trying to pretend like it doesn't exist or fight it altogether, we can lean in and call it what it is. We are simply in the beginning stages of change. This also helps us to support others whom we are either leading or walking through change alongside. It helps us to give words to what they might not actually be able to express. And it helps us to understand when they cock an attitude about the change that catches us a little off guard. Talking about the change cycle with anyone that you are leading or walking through change with can help give you shared vocabulary. When things are feeling especially hard, or even at a rhythmic time of checking in, identifying where each of you are in the change cycle can help all of those involved to be more empathetic towards one another and to help identify what is needed to move each other on to the next stage. Friends, I hope these 7 hacks for leaning into change help you as you step towards whatever change in your life you're currently facing or will be in the future. Remember, change is a sure part of life, and mastery of it, well, it doesn't exist. Be gracious, be aware, and be present. And that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Do you have questions, comments, or insights on today's content? I would love to hear from you. You can DM me on Facebook or Instagram, or head over to our website, inspiringheights.org, and click on the Contact Us form. I will link all those locations here in the show notes. P.S. If you haven't already, I would love for you to leave a 5-star rating and a quick review of the podcast. This helps get our content in the hands of new listeners. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter and follow us on social media for rhythmic doses of inspiration. All right, friends, take a deep breath and be inspired where your feet are. Bye for now.